Good afternoon all. Welcome to this afternoon's Recovering Future Generations PDC. We'll open the meeting with apologies for absence, please.
Thanks, Chair. I've got apologies from Councillor Terry Hennigan.
And I have apologies from Councillor Linda Tyler-Lloyd and Councillor Leslie Walton.
How we call it? Chair?
Oh, yeah, we've got four. Yeah.
One, two. Hiya, Mand.
Hiya, Paulette. How are you, darling? Long time no see. Right, guys. Any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests? None to note, Kate. And then we move on to the minutes from the meeting on the 26th of January. Page 1, page 2. Any matters arising?
I move.
Thank you. And then we move on to feedback from the work plan, which I believe was a success. It was a well worth exercise. So from that, we'll start on, as we discussed in the workshop, item 1, co-production. Obviously, I know a lot of members here have been on this committee a lot longer than I have, and have a passion to deliver the framework and to progress the co-production policy strategy. So obviously we had a good discussion in the workshop. Obviously I was going to touch base with Lee Weenham. I haven't to date, but suggestions around co-production were that we invite a representative from social services, you know, to do a presentation, because they've done quite a bit of work on co-production. So we invite them for them to kind of discuss or to present to us how they have achieved a policy or a framework as to where they are today. Obviously to invite Lee and his team back for an update on progress and how, you know, we approach it corporately. You know, and can we have a strategy developed like the social services have developed, and from what I'm hearing it's a massive success. You know, and can we start to discuss here how we could have a corporate approach? So I'll open it up to the floor. Any contributions?
No, I am good.
Councillor Sherwood?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Mandy. I would just recommend that we ask specifically for Lisa Wells from Social Services, because she's the person in social. No, sorry, Lisa Banks. Sorry. Yeah, Lisa Banks was leading on the development of co-production in social services, and I know that she's a really great advocate of co-production and has talked and thought, I know, a lot already about how you could mainstream it, how you could take what's been learned in a specific area of social services and roll that out to other areas of council delivery. So I think she'd be an excellent person for us to hear from.
Thank you, Mary. Can I just come in there? Good afternoon, Adam. Sorry, very remiss of me not to welcome you. It's lovely to see you here. Any more contributions? Any more ideas? Anything to feed in? So we know where we are now with obviously our co-production then. We get a plan of action together. We'll invite Lee and invite Lisa Banks to do a presentation, and then we'll just progress from there. The second item we spoke about was improving the look and feel of our neighbourhoods, something that we believe is quite a passion to our residents, where a lot of them feel they're you know, the local areas could be enhanced with simple things. And I know that a lot of us as members have contributed with, like with the wildflower scheme, and you know, contributed in a small way, but it's made a massive difference. So obviously we spoke to Martin Nichols, and the suggestion is it's more around the street scene agenda. And you know, we don't want duplication across what we've got in street scene and what our corporate boys are doing, and as to what we would deliver here. So a suggestion is maybe we invite Stuart Davison to talk to us about the street scene, and you know, maybe just discuss and explore how we can kind of gently persuade our residents, and how we could work with the residents to improve what needs to be repaired, or you know, how we can continue to enhance what people touch and what people feel and what is quite passionate to them in their communities. So obviously we can invite Stuart, or if there's any suggestions to invite anybody else, or any way that we can approach us in a different way, more than welcome. So I'll open it up to the floor. Any contributions? Joanne?
Yeah, I had a quick look on our council website, Mandy, and there is a section where you can report things like potholes and rubbish, but it could be a case there might be small tweaks about how we improve communicating to people in the community about how they report things. For example, they might not necessarily know which department deals with which thing, so it could be some small sort of areas we could tweak to sort of improve people's ability just to let us know of things that need to be repaired. So it doesn't necessarily need to be sort of a big scale project. So so perhaps Stuart can sort of touch on that in his presentation at a later date when he comes back to give us that overview.
Thank you, Jo. Mary?
Thanks. I'm sort of thinking out loud, so bear with me. Yeah, the report it form that Jo has mentioned online. I've had reports from residents, and I've experienced myself that there's a bit of a patchy response to those. It's not always consistent what happens. I'm not sure if you always get an automatic reply to say that it's been received. Perhaps you do, but then it's quite patchy whether the service gets back in touch with the person and says, we've investigated this, this is what we've done, or this is what we're going to do. Sometimes it just feels like you send that form off and nothing comes back. So I think it would be good to find out what the process actually is and whether more consistency across the organisation could be achieved. Also, I know that we're talking about things like street cleansing, bin emptying, potholes, trimming foliage, all that sort of stuff. Drain clearance. That these things go on a schedule, don't they? So I don't know whether there is anywhere that residents can look. I don't believe there is, that residents can look to see when was their street last done, when is it due to next be done. I know that keeping up a website like that can be a lot of work, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that we should do that. But I do think that as a committee, at least, we should have sight of what those schedules are, and that would help us start a conversation on whether we feel that they're adequate, whether they are flexible enough, whether they are well resourced enough, and how we might communicate them to the public so that everyone feels better informed and more ownership of this topic. So maybe if the committee could start to look at, well, what are the schedules for these things and how do we communicate with the public about these things? Does that make sense?
Thank you, Mary. And I think once again, you know, if we've got report it, it's therefore it's a beneficial tool, or it should be a beneficial tool for our residents, and maybe a couple of tweaks, you know, might make it easier and might build the confidence in the the reporting system from the residents so that they do feel confident. If it just takes an automatic email, which I don't know if that happens currently, just to say, we've received your email and we'll update you on so-and-so date. And I believe it can be done, and probably would take a lot of pressure off some of the teams that are out there actually doing this work as well. So thank you for your contribution, Mary. Anyone else to contribute?
Is it, Chair, is there any way of us,
Cyril, did you indicate to speak?
No one else did, so I asked. So that's why I come to ask you as Chair.
Come on then, Cyril.
Yeah, what I'm looking at, especially what Mary is saying now, is there any way, perhaps Adam might know this, we can get funding so that each specific areas could have like facelifts or, like flowers. I'll give you for instance now, outside mail shops, it's just bare there. Wouldn't it be nice if we could put some pots, flower pots, not so much all wildflowers, but little trees or something? Is there any way of funding? Could we go that way for funding? Adam?
Sorry, Cyril, I think there's quite a bit. Obviously, Paulette's indicated first, and then unless Adam wants to answer on this question raised.
Thanks, Chair. It was just in response to Cyril, really. I mean, there are pockets of funding. The one thing we need to be careful of, and not to be negative, but it's that continuation. So it's great putting the flower pots in. Someone needs to maintain them, look after them, water them. What I really like was that start of the discussion in that co-production. So rather than the council providing it, work with the local community who will look after it, water them, and provide it themselves. So I take that full circle back to where you started, and rather the council provide it, help the communities to help themselves, and that way we probably could get some funding as a co-production model in order to make that happen. So we shouldn't always look for the council to provide. What we should be doing is a facilitator to encourage the community to help themselves, local shops, local businesses, or people themselves provide it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Paulette, do you want to come in on this?
Can you hear me now, Mandy?
Yes, Paulette, yes.
Okay. I'm just concerned, and I know I missed a lot of the meetings, is as we are gradually coming down from lockdown, have we got any plans to facilitate any problems that are going to arise? Because different wards have got different problems. And I can see that my ward is going to have different issues to perhaps Mandy's ward or Mary's ward or Cyril's. So have we got anything that we are going to place because into, how can I say, have we got anything in place then ready for these problems? Because of course, when we did start as a committee, a lot of these weren't raised. So I'm just asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulette. Obviously, I would say that we are still very much in response mode because of this lockdown. Adam's here, so obviously Adam could probably update us. But, there is a recovery framework which is being developed. I don't know whether Adam wants to come in and contribute on this. Yes, he does.
Yeah,
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, it's a good job I joined. So there's a few things. So first of all, yeah, although we're sort of in recovery, we're actually still in response mode. We're still in tier 4 lockdown and will be for the next certainly number of weeks, and then we'll see an easing. So there's two forms of recovery that really we're looking at. So there's the immediate recovery, so the help and support for community, which will come through a COVID recovery, which is currently being put together by Place Team, and that will be a very localized response, an immediate response, if you like, to COVID recovery. There is then the bigger recovery plan, which is where we're going to look at that transformation of the council. We're looking at how we look to the future. So looking really to between now and 2022, and then looking from 2022 onwards, probably for the next 5-10 years after that. So what do we need to be as the council? What's the different skill sets that we need? How do we retrain people? What does a new leader in Swansea look like, or a new manager, Swansea manager? So there's all those aspects. How do we look at our agile workforce? So there's one that's inward facing for us in terms of where do we go as the authority. The other one is another branch of that recovery plan, which is how do we support the wider economy over the longer term? So that recovery of jobs, what we're seeing in terms of the redevelopment of the city centre, for example, to bring more prosperity in, how we're looking at rolling out Wi-Fi into the wards. So again, there's more people that can potentially work from home, have faster broadband, do home working, and look at that whole digital infrastructure also. So there's a whole myriad of things that are being put out there in preparation for that recovery. So I think it depends really on what do you see as the issues that your area is going to focus on, and then how does that fit with the recovery plans that we've got. But we are looking at it Swansea wide, not just Swansea Council. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Adam. Any other contributions? I would just like to say, you know, every ward is different, every location is different. You know, we've got a big city, and you know, COVID has brought so many different pressures to us, things that you know, this time last year we never ever would have foreseen. That really we've done so well, and I will say that. And you know, every opportunity I have, I will always say how well our workforce have done. They've been deployed to different roles. They've all been positive and flexible. And as a city and as an authority, we've done really, really well. And I really think we need to tap, you know, our teams on the back as much as possible to say well done. But I also think there's a lot to be learnt from this last year. And as we kind of climb out of COVID, there's a lot that probably we've learnt, or a lot that we've done that's been positive. And I, for one, would not like to leave those positive interactions, whether they be just dog walking, or whether they be just cooking a dinner for your neighbour, or whether it's something that we've done massively, which have touched so many lives and supported people in the communities that we represent. I would like to capture that and work with these volunteers or work with our teams to probably give them the confidence, because a lot of them have the skill and they've brought the skill. That talent pool has been, you know, really aspire to it. And I believe that there's a lot of people out there within our teams and external to our teams that can bring so much to the table. And when we talk about wards, we know these people in the wards, and across the city we know, you know, these people who really deserve a gold star for what they've done, as little as it is or as massive as it is. So for me, when we talk about touch and feel, there's a lot of people out there doing little things that make a difference to the communities. And, you know, my aspiration is then that we capture this and we kind of encourage it to continue, because the little things that have happened, or the larger, you know, bigger scale things that have happened, have made a hell of a difference to a lot of people that we represent and to the people across the city of Swansea. And I do believe it's been a learning curve for us, and we've presented and we've delivered, I would say, a class A service. But there's a lot of things that we might miss as we recover from COVID, which I think will make a massive, it will be an advantage to the residents we represent and to us as a local authority as we move out of COVID, because none of us really know what's facing us. But the little things make a difference to people. And that is about, it's not only about emptying the dog bin. You know, to me, it's different things. And I totally agree with Adam. When we talk about co-production, it is giving responsibility and ownership back, because the residents have shown us what they can do, whether it's individually, collectively. They have done, well, I would say, a grade A job in providing the little things that matter. And that's where we should be, because it's not all about big and beautiful. The small, delicate little things that, you know, might be just walking the dog, or might be just having a lunch from next door. That takes the pressure off us in massive ways, because people do worry about who's going to walk their dog, and am I going to have a lunch, or is somebody going to make me a sandwich? And, you know, we've seen people come out of their homes and stand up and be counted. And that's what's carried us forward. And I think it's been a success. So that's all I'm saying is, guys, to capture those little things and to capture it on a larger scale, we need to capture as much as we can, because it will be an advantage to us. Anybody want to contribute? No? Right, next item then, guys. Right, we move on to, next thing we discussed was building upon the community action, or well, I just touched on this, volunteering and good deeds undertaken by individuals in the communities. So obviously you all know how I feel about it, and I won't say any more. But in the workshop we discussed probably inviting Amy Hawkins to talk to us, you know, about the plans, because social services, you know, have done really well, and they've secured funding to support volunteering schemes and, you know, community response and community resilience, you know, and they've got a massive plan. So when we talk about building on community action and giving that ownership and that responsibility back, there's so much good practice that has been exercised in the last year. We just need to find a way to carry it forward and support these people, whether it's paid or unpaid roles, or whether it's just a touch point action, or whether it's en masse. So the proposal was to invite Amy Hawkins to talk to us about the plans in social services, and maybe we could develop a policy or a process from that. Is there any contributions? Jo?
Yes, I think Amy's also starting to look at a volunteering strategy for staff. There was one in development a few years ago. I don't think it was implemented. I think some people left from HR, and for various reasons it wasn't implemented. So I think Poverty and Prevention are going to revisit that. And also within there, I think there's this keenness to look at what they call hyperlocal volunteering, which is exactly what you said, Mandy. It's about people in the community doing little things like dog walking, you know, cooking a meal for somebody that's not necessarily part of a larger sort of like voluntary organisation or a structured thing. So it's about, I suppose, encouraging that, but making sure that the governance that is there to safeguard people they're helping, and also themselves. So I think, yeah, it's a good idea to invite Amy to hear about their plans, to see how the committee can shape those plans going forward, and then to see if there are any sort of other gaps that need to be plugged to make, you know, build upon this, like this community spirit that's come through COVID.
Thank you for that, Jo. Adam?
Thanks. Yeah, it's just a bit of an ask, really, on Amy's behalf, just before we invite her in for too many. Amy's really willing and a brilliant person to invite in, and I'm just mindful that at the current time where social services is in terms of, yeah, it's very, it's on the edge at the moment with regard to COVID, in terms of the amount in care homes, trying to get vaccinations through, trying to get people returned. And I'd just be a little concerned if that was earlier on the agenda rather than later, that was all in terms of your work plan. It's just to, her priority must be to deliver the adult social care agenda and community agenda at the current time. So it's absolutely invite her in, absolute right person. It's just a timing issue, I think, for that one. The second part of that is in terms of where we were talking about staff and volunteering, and it maybe you'll come on to this later. Unfortunately, I couldn't join your work planning session, but it's just something around the workforce strategy, that the things like volunteering, you know, during this time, lots of staff have done volunteering. and stepped into a different area than perhaps they're used to being in as their normal day job. So I just wondered if there's something around the whole of the workforce strategies that we need to look at, perhaps again looking a bit more insular at our own workforce, and around that skills and training. People have stepped away. You know, it's been almost a year since perhaps some people have done what is their substantive job, and there are completely different skills now that we need. You know, managers need to be able to manage remotely, outcome focused, but still have that input. We need to work out how we work in a digital online world that is now 24/7, but we need to look after the well-being of our workforce.
Yeah.
You know, those corridor conversations that we used to have that were very important and still are no longer take place. So we're losing some of that connectivity in and around the workplace that will never return. We will never, my view is we will never return back to the full workforce that was in the office as previously. That's a whole new world of management that we need to think of. So what does a new Swansea manager look like? What does a new Swansea leader look like? How do we get the softer skills of managers in and around a workplace when we're no longer going to meet in a workplace? So, you know, it's not as easy to have those personal conversations on a 3x3 or a 6x6 or a 9x9 grid in the same way as you can in a room where you sit across a table. Now, there'll be some of that, but how do we check in with the staff in a world that now is back-to-back meetings with no gaps in between? So how do we put that informal back into what has become very formal in terms of meeting? So it's about retraining and reskilling. What are we looking for our new workforce? So it's our current workforce, but we need to almost re-induct them back into Swansea, but into this new world of Swansea, not just looking at where we were previously and everyone's just going to fit right back into where they were previously. And also something around that red tape busting in terms of policies and practices. During COVID, we have trusted staff probably more than we've ever trusted them before to do the job that they're there to do. And we've removed all the shackles, all the barriers, and just said, go and manage. And they've done a brilliant job, as you've all already identified. So why would we want to go back and put all those in? So what have we lost that actually isn't a loss, it's a gain, because it empowers our workforce in order to do what they need to do? Finally, then, you know, how does that come out in terms of performance? Because all of our staff have not only stepped up to the mark, they've gone way above and beyond. So how do we capture that as an outcome performance model moving forward, but not become so outcome focused we lose that connectivity again from within? So some of that is workforce planning, some of it is around agile working, and then the final bit, I think that's two finals I've had, but that's not unusual, is things like the general power of competence. You know, the Local Government and Elections Act gives us different powers that we can work to. So how do we develop our workforce in a shortish space of time to be able to capitalize on that new act and other new connectivities that perhaps they haven't had the opportunity to before? So some of that could be co-production that we talked about, co-location. It could be about the general power of competence. What's our ambition? So it's something for me around that workforce. And it was just that one bit that I think Joe said in terms of that volunteering that kind of led me down. Actually, there's a lot more than just volunteering of our workforce, you know, that which is great in itself. And we should look at that to not lose that connectivity. But it's much wider than that in terms of we have a different workforce today than when I joined 2.5 years ago. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mary?
Thanks, Chair. I believe that there have been some sort of workforce surveys conducted, but I'm not 100% sure. Is that right? I think it would be really valuable for this committee to have a look at those if that's possible, and see what we can pull out of them to help crystallize, the points that Adam has just made, and see if they can help us set a future direction for this committee.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. A lot of them was more around the well-being. A lot of those surveys were how are people coping at home? Do they work well? Was there anything else they felt they needed? Any further support or guidance? More than that future scoping of what will they look for? So predominantly, I'll quote some figures. I know they were in this ballpark, but sort of into the 80s of people comfortable working from home. So, there was, in the early surveys, people were really struggling to work at home. In the later surveys, actually people had got into the mindset of how they juggle home life, homeschooling, care responsibilities, and so on, and set their homes up accordingly to be able to respond and be able to do the job, and had to work it out. It was a massive change. Almost overnight, we went from a few hundred people working at home to thousands of people working at home, and which is a massive transition. In any change program, they would say, don't do it in this way. Just don't ever tackle it overnight. Yet again, all the staff have made it work. So I think, I'm not sure the surveys would be a lot of use in terms of that future scope. But I think what it has shown is that people are now in that place of home working, agile working from different sites, no longer feel they necessarily need to come into an office. Now, that's not everyone. Probably 20% of the workforce still have a requirement to come into the office, still need to be in an office. Certainly people like some of the lawyers, the planners, because of the screens and size of equipment that they have. And for lawyers, obviously, getting to and from court easily and getting the papers. So there is some that would always need to work, but I'm not sure. I think you'd go down a track of not being overly helpful with the surveys, because it wasn't really future gazing and horizon scanning. It was more, let's make sure our workforce are okay.
Can I just ask
Yeah,
some more,
come on,
please,
Mary.
Mandy? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, well, that being the case, I suppose what I was wondering is if there have been any surveys about asking the workforce what they feel has worked well for them during lockdown, aside from the well-being bit, and so the point that Adam made was that, we removed shackles and we let people get on with things and do what they felt needed to be done. And I think for this committee to be clearer about how we make that business as usual, it would be valuable to try and get some voices from the workforce that can tell us, how has that worked for them, and how did it occur during lockdown? What can we learn from that in such a way that we can embed it going forward? And I think if we're serious about the co-production thing, we shouldn't embark on this task without talking to or listening to some people from our workforce who can tell us what it really feels like for them and what their own views are on how things could change for the better. So I'm not sure how we would go about that. If there hasn't already been a survey that captures that, I'm not sure how we would go about having that conversation. Maybe we could just throw out a general call for people to talk to us, or to fill in a specific survey that would help the PDC gather those views. Maybe even just get some random people from around the organisation to come and talk with us about what their life in lockdown as a council officer was like, and how they think that could improve business as usual going forward. I think perhaps, maybe it's time for us to look at co-production and how we would do that with our own workforce.
Thank you, Mary. Adam?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Mary. I think what would be helpful is almost if the PDC came up with what that questionnaire is. That is something you guys could do for us. We could then distribute it through HR and OD or through one of the teams, no problem at all. So, scope it through here. We can then service it and return it back to you in terms of, here's the numbers and this is what it means. And one of the questions on the bottom would be, would you be happy to come and talk to the committee about your experiences? And let's not just hear it on paper. Let's hear the hearts and minds bit of this at the committee, and then out of that, add it around that sort of that workforce planning, that workforce strategy in terms of what have we heard, what do we know, what have they said, and then deliver it through this committee in terms of what policies do we need to change in terms of things like agile working, volunteering, just our hours of work. Lots we can look at. What does the Swansea manager look like? Bring HR and OD in. We've lost a lot of training over the years because of cuts and funding not being available. So how do we utilise, they talk about that co-production. We have a lot of people with lots of skills across the council who could pass those on. We don't necessarily need to pay, hundreds of thousands of pounds for MBAs and ILMs and so on. We actually just need to share. So how can we do that? What mechanisms do we have? And a policy around training, development and sharing of information would be really helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Cyril, did you indicate to speak?
I did, but Adam answered what questions I was going to, and I totally agree with Mary, what she's saying about we need to get officers, mostly staff, that's done all this hard work behind the scenes, living at home, working from home. I'll speak for my wife. Adam put a pointer on it. The hours. Yeah. I know my wife is working officially from 9 to 5. Yeah. But she's sometimes upstairs at 8 o'clock in the morning and she don't come down till 6. And I'm sure that goes on with our hardworking staff. So yeah, I would like this, if we could invite them along and speak freely to us, not be afraid to, oh, am I out of order here? I would like to see them come and speak freely to us, and that's when we'll get the general feeling of our staff, because they have worked tremendous.
Thank you, Cyril. Can I just come in there? Wholeheartedly behind the staff, and I am very much a staff-oriented person. Terms and conditions means a lot to me. But as been said, it's brought different pressures and we've kind of exercised positively. But also for councillors, for the members, because we're all different, we all bring something different to the table. And I think I would be interested to hear of the experiences of the councillors. Because I, for one, as you know, I'm locked away, but probably I've done more work over the last year than I've done in the previous 2 years. Because it is at the push of a button, you're there. But I would also like to say, and I thank Adam for highlighting this, we are all different and agile working won't be for everyone. So we are going to have that percentage for whatever reason, loneliness, isolation, maybe just that passion to come into the workplace. And as we move forward, we need to consider the needs and demands on every single employee that we have. And, to consider that fairly everyone's different and everybody does have different needs. And, my concern is obviously with those who are very much alone, and they will be isolated and lonely as well. So to encompass it all, but I'm all for us compiling a survey and having members of the workforce to come and speak to us, because I think we'll learn a lot from it. Thank you. Right, the next item we spoke about was...
Sorry, Chair, just before we move on, if I may, just to complete the circle, because so that's great in terms of the workforce, the skills, the knowledge, how long people are working. Whether or not we need another perspective, and that's of our customers, our residents, in terms of what's it been like for our residents who have probably made more contact with the council because of COVID, shielding, vaccinations, all kinds of things, and also because services have closed and opened as they've gone. How does that feel for them in terms of the new world? Because we might go, yeah, it's great working from home, we're all available, it's all brilliant, but the customer might be turning around and going, but I can't get hold of anyone. People aren't readily available because we're now working agilely, so people might have time off in the day and work later into the evening, which might work better for the customer or might work worse for the customer. So I just wonder if there's a completing of the circle there that we need to, when we've done that first part, maybe we do just need to check, that our residents and how was it for them?
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. Cyril, would you like to contribute?
Yeah, Adam is spot on, because how many times have you, as a councillor, myself, have had people phone us up, can't get hold of this council on the phone, and they do everything they can. But it is sad sometimes where they don't know, they phone in the number that's on the website, but the person on the other end is not in the office, and they're only picking up off their mobiles or whatever, their home numbers. So yeah, I agree with you, Adam. We need to put that out there as well. If they're not in the office, there should be an additional number.
Okay, thank you, Cyril. Right, the next item that we spoke about in the workshop was
Sorry, Chair, Paulette's got a hand up. Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Paulette, I didn't see you. Paulette, do you want to come in?
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. We're discussing, obviously, the workforce of the council and the people that we serve, which are the citizens of the City and County of Swansea. It would be a massive opportunity now that, because this is the first year that the Assembly have suggested or are going ahead with 16 and 17-year-olds having the vote, what they feel they've missed out on and how they can go ahead and assist the council. They've all got ideas what politicians are. Some are good, some are bad. But do you think that we could sort of nurture them to realise it isn't a case of sitting in a room and just letting everything go ahead? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paulette. I believe we will kind of touch on younger people in a later item, or I will be anyway. But thank you for that. That's an interesting one.
Chair, if I may just say, I'm not sure if this is the right committee or which one this would refer to, but thinking about that wider that Paulette talks about in terms of children, sort of thinking about the youth council aspect for the authority, and that's a true youth council. That's not just a youth council made up of those that we want to bring in because they're going to follow the same path. This is a true youth council that is almost elected by the schools, by the youth organisations to come in and utilise that almost as a model citizen for that age group coming through. And that can be not only those that are 16 and 17, because quite right, as Paulette says, we've got these new voters coming through, but also the future voters. So thinking 14, 15, getting them ready, bringing them through so that they understand that, and they can be our advocates also back into the younger generation to talk about what we do, but also just to make sure we're in touch. Because we often talk about the older generation, my generation, and the documents we put out are quite often aimed at sort of middle Wales, if you like, older age groups, rather than children, and these are the voters for the future and our residents of the future. Of course, they're residents now, but I mean, owning that residency, being our future workforce. So part of that would sit within the Education and Skills PDC. But I think that here, that transformation of the council, that future generation, it sits here in terms of how would we go about setting up a youth council and implementing it. And in this year, wouldn't that be a great thing for the PDC to have achieved? The youth council in a year when we're having an election for 16 and 17-year-olds that can take the vote. So like I say, I'm not sure if this is the right one, but hey, I'll always give you my opinion.
Thank you, Adam. But I do agree. you know, that's future generations. You know, sometimes their voice is not heard in an adequate capacity, I would say. But it may be a way of capturing, you know, that element of our communities as well. So it's definitely something that we need to discuss on this committee. And I agree, Adam, you know, to look at it as a way of transformation rather than an education and skills kind of committee or group, maybe a way that we may overcome the issues that it should be sitting with Education and Skills PDC. Mary?
Thanks. So in my WLGA role, we were looking into youth councils before Christmas now, back in November. And I asked for a list of where they exist around Wales and where they don't. Where they don't is only Gwynedd and Swansea. So we do, what we found out was that we do have a youth forum, and I am asking Katie Spendiff for more information about that. But I suspect, as Adam has proposed, it might be a selection of young people whose views we seek from time to time, which isn't the same thing as a youth council. The reason why I was asking the question with WLGA was because I'd been asked by members of the public, younger members of the public, about whether Swansea could have a youth council and how we compare to the rest of Wales in not doing so. So I definitely do think this is the right PDC to look at this. It is a transformation issue, it is an equality issue, and yeah, I think that is something that we'd do well to add to the work plan if we've got some room. I agree.
Thank you, Mary. Adam, would you like to come back?
Yeah, just to clarify, yeah, we do have a youth forum, and we do positively engage with them. They helped us recruit the new director of education. We brought them in as a panel in order to give us feedback on their view of the human rights and of the child and so on, United Nations and so on. So they are actively engaged with. It's not the same as a youth council. You're quite right. They're different things, and there's room for both. But they are a very good group, the youth forum, and we should use them more. But we really need to focus on and if there was sort of a way round for me, not that I shape this forum, but it's almost that would be one to bring in early, because I'd really love to see a youth council formed, and I didn't realise that stat, Mary. So the fact that there's only 2 that aren't there, that for me is a priority, that we ought to get that engaged and brought through. And I just think this is the year to do it when we've got the 16 and 17-year-old elections. So for me, if that could be refocused, that would be great in terms of an early win, I think, for the PDC.
Thank you, Adam. The next item that we discussed in the workshop was identify a list of services, activities that the council currently outsource, with a view to considering whether they should be brought back in-house and provided by the council. Related to this is also the identification of new services and the council that the council doesn't currently provide, but could provide in the future, given the general power of competence within the Local Government and Election Wales Bill. We've had a bit of correspondence with the director of from the Place Directorate. The answer was it's only Freedom Leisure that contract. The Freedom Leisure contract is obviously there. It's been running for numerous years, and it's got a few years to run. But under the general power of competence, we might consider how this impacts on council's future and the commercial strategy. So it was about, we could do something on apprenticeships and grow the in-house services across the council, but not really sure who would lead on it, obviously. Is it more a place issue? From the Resources Directorate, more complicated, and wonder if consideration should be more around a strategy to maximise opportunities brought through the general power of competence, and what could be done as a council that we don't do, that the power enables us to undertake, and review how the power has been used in local authorities across the UK. And then from the People Directorate, the rebalancing of the extent in which social care services are directly provided by councils or commission from the third sector through social enterprises and from independent sector is being considered. So it was an area that was being considered on the People's PDC. And social care apprenticeships and training pathways form part of the council's existing apprenticeships schemes, which lifts itself within a wider workforce employability under the Tackling Poverty strategy, and the Poverty PDC continues working on this area. So we obviously discussed this in the workshop. We've done a little bit of research, and that's what we've had to date. So I know that Joe's not here today. Joe has a passion, obviously, with social care. That's his background. That's what he does best. And even though it was a collective question that was raised or discussion that was debated, I know that Joe wouldn't mind me saying here that his passion is with continuing in-house apprenticeships in social care to develop our army of carers, so that if ever we slipped into a crisis of, anything like COVID-19, that we would be more prepared. But then, Joe will always say that obviously we have done extremely well, but it's just an opportunity to develop apprenticeships for us to have our in-house workforce, and to give an opportunity to people. And we're not talking about apprenticeships for young people. We're talking about apprenticeships or opportunities for all residents, young, old, it doesn't matter, to trying to develop a strategy where the outsourced policy is kind of developed to be built as a more in-house policy. So I'll open it up. Adam?
Thank you, Chair. I didn't think I was going to come and say much today, but there you are.
Very more than welcome.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I just feel that there's a duplication again with that workforce strategy that we talked about earlier, and actually, if you just bolted into that apprenticeships, because I could make the same argument for place as I could for resources in terms of legal staff, which are very difficult to get hold of, and finance staff the same. I could work through all the services that. Actually, it's that continuum, not only just in apprenticeships, but in terms of that whole pathway for training development. So an apprenticeship may give you one opportunity at whatever age you can be an apprentice, but it's also about giving leadership opportunities, management opportunities. And what we've learned through COVID is that there's great opportunities where people have gone to do a different job and excelled at it, and learn new skills or given new skills to that workforce. So it kind of feels that the apprenticeship bit should fit perhaps where we talked earlier in that workforce. When we talk about services that are outsourced, we're blessed really in many ways that we're not a council that's outsourced much at all. And we've been very careful on what we've outsourced in order to get the best we can get for our money and for the residents in terms of provision. I just worry that if we look too much about what we've outsourced to bring back, we're almost conflicting ourselves in terms of what we're doing, because that's not really the general power of competence, isn't to just take everything back. It's really about exploring where we could add bigger and better value to the community. Perhaps, you know, things like post officers. You know, could we run post officers in our I don't know, in the community hub, or could we run it in some of our own council buildings, or could we co-produce that with someone else? So there are lots of things that we could look at that the power would give us. So I'd rather look at what can we do to facilitate adding value than spending a lot of time trying to unpick what we've already done. I think, you know, we need to be probably more forward-looking in terms of where we go. Would be my thought. That's all.
Thank you, Adam. Can I come in there? Obviously, with my other hat on in Great Western, about 3 years ago, they developed a strategy where they, through application, recruited a team of ad hoc managers, and the purpose was successful applicants would have a 2-year secondment from their role, where they would sit in finance for 3 months. Then they would go to all the different departments, and then after 2 years they would return back to their substantive role, obviously with an opportunity of developing skills in different departments and having a feel of the different departments. And then when a vacancy became available, obviously the talent pool was there, and then it was a matter of retaining our workforce rather than having to scope for external candidates. So it was a line of promotion. It was kind of given opportunity, and well, they had hundreds of applications, and they employed 60, and but 25% have gone on and actually secured through promotion, well, higher salaried jobs, and it's been quite a success. So whether we could consider something for anybody who has a passion to take an opportunity to to develop skills in other departments, and even if we just said, okay, we'll take like finance and HR as an example, and just maybe couple 2 or 3 departments together, and it may be a way of mentoring people and giving people opportunity internally, and obviously building on a talent pool, which I think we've got a massive talent pool. We just don't exert the talent from it, do we? Adam, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've just said. We need to be growing our own. We need to be, and many years ago, God, how many is that now? 32 plus years ago, I started as a trainee, and that's set me in good stead to understand how local government worked and partnerships and so on. So absolutely agree. And again, that for me is still that workforce strategy, very much clear. Unfortunately, Chair, I need to go and join another meeting, I'm afraid. I'd only got this down for the hour, so my apologies. I'm going to have to dip out, but happy to discuss anything else that you want to outside of here if you want to set up another meeting. My apologies, I must go.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your attendance. Very welcomed. And thank you for your contribution, Adam. Take care.
Great, thank you. Bye all.
Thank you. Right then, so any contributions on building upon community action, volunteering, no, it's not that one. Identifying a list, that's the one. Anything else on identifying lists? Joel?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this as well, Mandy, in terms of what recovery means for different people and different communities. Because I think there's a big focus on the regeneration of the city centre and the big developments. But I think there was talk about, well, what does recovery mean for some people in maybe some poorer communities? And maybe it's about stepping back to work, and obviously social care is a growth area, and it might not necessarily be anything as formal as an apprenticeship to start with, but it's about building on some of the work or some of the volunteering that they might have been doing in that mentoring, some more of that sort of softer stuff. And so it's linked very much with sort of economic regeneration and help for people in some of the more sort of deprived communities in terms of economic recovery, because we do know down the line sort of is the impact of COVID and on jobs and the economy are going to be massive.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. Yes, it has been very much spoken about, and it was discussed, where once again, army of volunteers or very, very willing residents who have seen a need, you know, and there's loads of examples out there, massive examples out there. And I don't know whether I've said here, I did say in the workshop, probably about 8 years ago now, I was actually part of a team who mentored a lady who was probably my age, who had brought up 3 sons, and she never had a passion to open a book and read. So she said, I used to open a book and I would make my own story up just looking at the pictures. And then all of a sudden, a grandchild comes into this world, and the grandchild or the granddaughter wanted Nana to read. So this lady actually came forward and said, I want to learn to read. And she contacted me years after and said, thank you, because you gave me the confidence to show I could do it. So it's little things like that that mean massive amounts to little people. And, you know, we have got people who struggle with many elements of life. So it is just about going to a community centre or going somewhere where probably, as an example, you can pick a book up and give somebody the confidence and encourage them that they can do it. Mm-hmm. Because we all know about negative educational experiences, which really carries through life. So it's things like that that I believe we could be doing that would make a massive difference to a lot of lives out there. But there's so many examples. And, you know, I have said to Joe, I know a lad who lives in Llantrisant, and I phone him nearly every day. And every day I phone him, there's somebody there knocking on the door, the dog walker. And what he had said to me was, this lad, he'd met him in a park, he knew him, he's in the village, and breaks down a relationship. Now this lad who walks the dog twice a day, has obviously built a relationship with Steve and the dog, takes the dog twice a day so Steve can actually get on with his work, and has integrated back into the community because he's had the ability to walk that dog. And it was just like, wow. So when we talk about walking dogs, there's a lot to be said, because it is integration. It's taken away loneliness and isolation. And we talk about building relationships. That fella was very much on his own. But that's where we are, and that's my 2 examples. So the little things do mean a lot. And when we talk about us as an organisation, delivering these big, bold strategies, apprenticeships, we mustn't forget about the community-based volunteers who have actually carried us through COVID. So how do we capture that? Cyril?
Yeah, I agree with Joanne. Because of COVID now, there's going to be a lot of unemployment. We need to capture, perhaps we won't be able to give them jobs, but try to encourage these volunteers into a workspace for volunteers, but hopefully in time then to encourage them and give them the confidence in getting back into full-time employment. That's, you know, that's what I would like to try and have a go at.
Thank you, Cyril. And then the final item, I believe it's the final item. Let's have a look. My paperwork's in a mess here again. The final item was transport. We spoke about inviting Kath Swain or Stuart Davis, you know, to give us an overview of the transport needs and the council's transport, you know, to come and to address the committee of where we are with local transport, and also possibly to invite a representative from, example, Transport for Wales, or possibly First Bus, or whoever we wish the desire is for. And, you know, even somebody from a community transport scheme to come and give us insights as to probably pre and post COVID, and how, you you know, we can start talking about the issues that transport brings to us every day and to hundreds of our residents. So just for me to feed in, obviously, the managing director of Great Western has got a big push currently to, well, he's lobbying the government about extending the electrification down to Swansea, because we all know electrification should have come to Swansea, but they cut us off in Newport, really, even though they say Cardiff. So there's a big push from the TOCs, the transport operating companies, to try and deliver and develop electrification into Swansea. That's very much out of our hands, but quite a positive if he can achieve it. You know, and the thing is, it's like, you know, we got the metro line. Obviously, community transport means so many different things to so many different people. But probably the need and the demand is there to deliver community transport. But I'll open it up if anybody wishes to contribute.
Yeah, I'd like to go. Sorry, Joe, go on. You
No,
put your hand up.
no, sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's quite a broad issue, and I think your PDC is looking at transport as well, Cyril, and I think a scrutiny inquiry is about to be set up to look at transport. Yeah. So I think it's a case of looking at where this committee can add value to what else is going on. That there might be a possibility of having a joint committee meeting or planning thing between the two committees or three committees at some time in the future, really. So sorry, that's all I just wanted to say.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, Joe. We have got green infrastructure coming up now next month, and that's all to do with electric cars, trains, buses. How can we car sharing? For what I would like, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say now. Or suggest is, we've had it ourselves with transport, and we get first bus, our CAF Swain, to give us an heads up on what's happening with the buses. Perhaps we could also bring that out to the residents. They don't get any flow what's happening with the bus services. So I'd like to put that forward as well. That's all I got to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Cyril. And that's all the Oh, Mary Sherwood. Mary, do you want to come in, Mary?
Yeah, thanks. Just to mention, I think I mentioned in our workshop that For the Region held a transport conference at the start of February. I have emailed and asked that they provide you, Mandy, with a copy of whatever report they're producing. They are going to be sending that to Welsh Government, because really it's a response to the Wales Transport Strategy consultation. But a lot of the work in that event was really about, well, what can we do now? What can we do regardless of Welsh Government and regardless of the current legal context, which everyone thinks needs to change? What can householders be encouraged to do? What can local businesses be encouraged to do? And things like that. So I agree with what Joe says. I mean, my PDC is also very interested in transport, because transport, along with childcare, is one of the biggest barriers to anyone, you know, having choices and being able to make changes in their lives. So yeah, a joint PDC's workshop on transport might be a really good idea. Maybe we could get someone from For the Region to come and talk to us, you know, and take us through whatever report they produce following the conference. And then maybe we look at like which PDC is best placed to focus on which particular aspect of this whole big transport thing. Maybe that would be a good way forward.
Thank you, Mary. So that concludes all the contributions from the workshop. And then we go on to, where's my agenda now? The work plan for the work plan for 2021, within 2021, the work plan ongoing. So for March, Adam is booked in to come and present the recovery strategy or the recovery framework. So that is penciled in. I'll confirm with Adam that he's attending. I know that he would have quite a bit to present to us in March. So that's one thing we got on there. So with regard to the debate we've had here today, maybe the youth committee, I think, is a priority. And if we can achieve that one, I think that's a massive, a positive output from this committee. Mary, you're on mute, Mary.
Thank you. Sorry to jump back in on that youth council thing. I need to correct myself because I went back and checked my email from WLGA while we were talking. So what WLGA had actually said was that Swansea and Gwynedd were the only councils in Wales with neither a youth council nor a youth forum. But then latterly we found out, no, there is a youth forum. It's just actually not very well known, excuse me, and wasn't well known about by the officer who responded to the question from WLGA. So things aren't as bad as all that, but it seems as though the youth forums around in other parts of Wales operate more similarly to youth councils perhaps than ours does. But yeah, I just wanted to correct that. I didn't want it minuted that we were the only council that doesn't have a youth council. It wasn't quite that straightforward. Thank you.
So do we agree we're going to put that as a matter of priority on the work plan? Yeah. Cyril, did you want to come in? Sorry.
I was going to say also about what Mary said about the transport plan. But would those two items together be too much for one PDC day, hour? Because we're talking of two big issues there, aren't we?
Yeah, because Adam's come in, probably we could move that on and just have one meeting dedicated to transport, and we could do a workshop previous to collate, as much as we could. And, invite a guest speaker and just give them a 10-minute slot or a 20-minute slot.
Yeah.
But and I agree with you, Cyril. Transport is a big beast, really. And, if we're going to do it, we need to do it properly. So one session dedicated to transport, really is a priority. So March is done, Kate, yes?
Yeah, so we got March, the Youth Council, and Adam on the recovery framework, yes?
I think that's enough for March because I think the recovery framework is going to be a big one as well. Right, and then we've got, I would say, transport needs to be a session on its own. Maybe we need to put that as a priority so we know which PDC takes which aspect. So April.
Yeah, did you want to perhaps put feedback from transport workshop if you can have a workshop on it?
Yes, Mary. Yes, Kate, thank you.
There we go.
That's April. I think
Chair,
sorry.
I have a question. Mary and yourself agreed with what Joanne was saying about having the three PDCs together.
Yeah.
Could we arrange that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually, Mandy. Shall I liaise with Mary and Cyril and yourself to see if we can organise a joint meeting with the three committees, with somebody from for the region and other speakers we mentioned, maybe transport, etc. And then so we can have the feedback after that. So that might be May, Kate, maybe depending on timing.
Okay.
When is the date? Sorry, when is the meeting scheduled for May? Have you got it to hand, Kate? Sorry.
May I haven't, because that's a new diary. April is 27th of April. It's
that's all right. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it'll be the 27th of April.
Yeah, that's fine. So if we do that, then jointly meet, and then have a guest speaker to present from that forum. And then, so we got March, April, May. So May, I would say we should be touching on Support for council staff is another priority, because we will be climbing out of COVID then, won't we, really? Well, we hope. And, you know, where we are with support for the communities as well. So maybe May, I would say, a session on that dedicated just to that one agenda item. I don't know what anyone else feels. Joel, do you want to come in? Sorry,
Mandy, my hand was just left up.
That's all right. What's the feeling? Yeah, one session dedicated to that. We should be, well, there should be an aspiration for us to be recovering from COVID, or coming out of, you know, we'll be out of lockdown with a bit of luck. So I think that's a priority as well. So maybe we need to slot that in for May, and then we'll just set the following 3 months as we progress. Kate, do you want to come in? Sorry.
I'm just going to say, May comes under now the new financial, will come under the new municipal year, sorry. So do you want me to just sort of list this on the work plan, perhaps, for topics to follow?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then it's something we can sort of pick up and order then as we get into the new
thanks, Kate.
year.
Yeah, thank you. So, any other contributions? Thank you all for your attendance. I've enjoyed today. Well, I enjoy every day, but still. It's 3:15. Take care all, look after yourselves.
Can I just say something, man?
Yeah,
Just looking at the economy, environment, infrastructure.
Yeah.
For this, we haven't got a date for meeting, but perhaps the Civil Newydd strategy, the New Wales transport strategy, perhaps that we could invite for that date and have the three invited into the economy environment.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Is that okay with you, Mayor? We haven't got a date yet, do we? No.
No, we haven't got a date on this one either.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that, Cyril.
Good.
Mary?
I would just say that, yeah, that is about the Wales transport strategy overall.
Yeah.
And I think although it is worth, obviously the PDCs all do need to be aware of that. So maybe that would be a good starting point for all PDC committee members, those 3 PDC or all members, to be fully aware of what that strategy proposes. What the For the Region conference then did was to say, okay, the strategy is what it is. Welsh Government will do what they do. But actually, one of the biggest problems is the legislation, is the deregulation of the bus industry, and the fact that councils that didn't already have a municipal bus service up and running in 1985 haven't been able to set one up. So that we're a bit hamstrung, and we don't know when or if that might ever actually change. So given the current legal context, what can local councils, communities, businesses, employers and all that do to improve transport anyway? So I can certainly see the value in having a workshop or a session just on the transport strategy, but then we would need to plan something separate to look more widely at how we approach transport for ourselves as Swansea PDCs. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Stuart Davis will be presenting that.
Yeah.
So perhaps we could just invite him along to give us a heads up.
Yeah. Have you captured that, Kate?
Yeah, that's lovely. Thanks,
Thank you. Right then, guys, it's now nearly 3:20. Thank you all for your time and your contribution. Take care, look after yourselves. And before we go, are we going to have a workshop this month, or are we going to do it bi-monthly? I'll have a think and I'll let you know, okay? Right, thanks, guys. Take care. Look after you.